Get up on it, get up on it, get up on it. Get
More
shots on these motherfuckers, get shots on these dudes, get shots on these dudes. Contesting, we're still contesting. We're not contesting. Why are we not contesting? There we go, there we go.
In the corner.
Get in these corners, make sure we got these corners.
DS is here for the steal.
I'm so puckered right now.
Guys, resonates immediate.
Deep on the lane, guys. Fucking get on that shit.
We are not done yet. We are not done yet. Where are the resonates? Where are the resonates?
It's on.
I threw one.
We did it.
Oh my god.
Nice!
Yeah! God.
Goddamn.
Can someone please stop shooting my corpse?
I'm watching the bodies.
Hello, fellow Araxians, Commander Cyrious here. Today I want to dive in and talk about hype cycles. Recently, a longtime fellow Araxian, and generally a deep thinker, puts out really good stuff, put up a post on the subreddit. And its title was, "The honeymoon phase is over. It's time to acknowledge that the latest updates have introduced some of the most detrimental gameplay elements since launch." And I'll leave a link down in the description because any content from him is always a great read. It's always thought-provoking with a good balance of positive and negative. But it basically brings up how the most recent patch bought bastions, which are basically relentless Hesh farming machines at this point, and it brought war asset orbital strikes. From everything anyone has ever said across the history of this game, those would be just about the two worst things you could possibly introduce, right? Massive, high explosive farming machines with little to no counter. Yet, when those items were released into the game, the population almost quadrupled. Why is that? It's because of hype, yo. It's exciting big changes coming to the game. Now, about 2 years ago, in some patch, there was a bug fix where pulling vehicles from the death screen started working correctly. There was a bug where it either wouldn't work or you'd get double pulls 50% or more of the time. It was generally a bad feature. And all of a sudden, in one of their patches, they fixed a few strings and it worked. Was there a massive pop boost from this nice bug fix? Was there a new hit of hype for the game? No, nothing happened. It was barely noticed. So today I want to kind of dissect. I think most people, especially veteran players, they would rather get the latter thing. Engine improvements, performance improvements, bug fixes, right? Things that clean up the game, things that make it more functional, more kind of quality of life things. They want Rogue Planet games to solve things that have been lingering around for a really long time. And to be honest, I am probably in that category. The problem is, those things don't create hype. Sorry, it's just the way it is. Sure, they could do a little bit better job marketing it when they do those things. Give the patch a cool name like Escalation or OMFG and go after and tackle a lot of these little things. But still, in the end, none of those things are going to lead to epic video footage and screen caps of Bastion floating around the continents. On the other hand, I think anyone could have guessed, and Rogue Planet Games probably expected, that eventually Bastions would get pulled really without counters and be a platform with Hesh spam and free ESFs that can go ditch over any battle they want. And everything about that probably sounds like what most people would term as cancer gameplay. But the fact is, bringing these war assets and bringing Bastions into the game have done a lot more for the fights, for the day-to-day gameplay experience, than quality of life, bug fixes, or performance could ever do. So it becomes a tough balance, because if the only way you can keep your game alive is to constantly release things that will inevitably be game-breaking, and ignore all the little problems that are created along the way, for example, the fact that you have to toggle the missions on and off to try to get the timer to show on your screen, the game's problems will eventually choke out its progress. So I think you can all see the conundrum therein. From a designer's perspective that wants balance, throwing something in the game that creates hype but throws off balance is sort of a necessary evil. They have to just go with it and then pivot later on to try to tune it more into a functional use in the game. And that is really what Rel is aiming for the colossal tank to be. That will be the bastion killer when people don't have a bastion ready to counter that thing, or the force required to really man a bastion effectively. But the thing is right now, although it's been great, we already have to talk about the next hype cycle. As pointed out in the post, population is declining, and that's inevitable. Now let's not get too worried, guys. Our population is still triple what it was at the low point here when we thought we were getting Planetside Arena. Flights are still huge and supremely better, but it is obviously going into that downward slope after a big hype, a big patch like Escalation. Outfit Wars is very cool, but it has to teeter in a balance of if it encourages people to play too much, they will burn out. And right now, people don't have to play a lot, so there's going to be big lulls between each qualification phase. So Outfit Wars is really not something that's going to be able to keep people playing day to day, week to week, other than that 1 week where it basically takes place. And the other tough thing about the Escalation patch that won't give it quite as much staying power, and I give them major props for this, they put all of their time and energy into delivering content, and they delivered almost zero monetization / grind. Like, there's nothing from the A7 grind that you really have to have, that you feel like you really got to grind for, and it comes pretty easy anyways. And same with Merit. They made everything pretty accessible. I really haven't seen any complaints about the grind associated with this patch, which is great. I think it creates a lot of goodwill. At the same time, some people will not stick around as long if there's not something to grind for. It needs to be a reasonable grind. It can't be overwhelming, but there has to be a goal around. So what we already have to be looking towards now is the next hype cycle. To me, the Escalation patch should be for Daybreak games and Rogue Planet games a litmus test. If you build it, they will come, so to speak. The question was Planetside 2 as a franchise too old to really attract crowds? And I think Escalation really proved that, hey, people want this game to happen. They want to be here. They just need stuff going on for it in terms of development. So I'm hoping in some of the future larger content patches that they can deliver something that not only is hype, but doesn't risk unbalancing the game. A good example of that would be something like a new continent. New areas for people to play, it would bring hype without bringing in some vehicle that is over or underpowered. For anyone that hasn't checked in a while, last news we heard on Osure is that it was not actively in development at this time. That was back when they were trying to reset their team as they shifted everyone to Planetside 2. So I'm sure week to week they kind of decide what long-term projects they might work on in the future, and who knows when it may come back onto the drawing board. But one thing that would be interesting to me is finding a way to make use of the Planetside Arena map. It's a little bit awkward because you know it's Amarish underneath, so it would be weird to have Amarish and then Amarish 2. But it's got a lot of new biomes. All of the large facilities were sort of nuked off of that map. So bases that were tech plant bases lost the main structure. Biolab bases lost the biolab. But I'd be interested to see how it played out if they really designed the map to let construction fill those voids where there aren't enough structures. Much less restrictive build zones, maybe some sort of prefab things already up and running, or some serious cordium in some right spots to make it easier for the construction players to sort of build out the map for all the infantry and vehicle players. Just enough of a change of scenery or a change of pace that I think could generate one of those hype hills that this game needs to keep going. In a perfect world, obviously things would be built from scratch specifically for Planetside 2, but we've seen all the assets from Doku serve very well in both games. We've seen the Bastion, which was really developed for Arena, come in and have great effect in Planetside 2. The Javelin has made its appearance in Planetside 2, originally for Planetside Arena. So finding ways to make use of these assets to create little hype hills in the population while the dev team is still really getting back on its feet as it kind of refocuses its attentions on Planetside 2. I think can be a nice little stopgap measure, and hopefully in the future they can really focus on building things from scratch for Planetside 2, like Desolation was, for example. Just a quick side note for the PlayStation 4 players, they have officially hired someone that will focus entirely on getting these patches ported to the PS4. I think that's really good news for both camps. The PC players kind of had to deal with this lull after every patch where they had to spend time getting that patch ported to PlayStation 4 before they could get to work on the next one. I think they are wisely focusing the bulk of the team on just trying to keep the patching move forward on the PC to avoid those hype valleys, and they are hiring an additional person to make sure that content can make it to PlayStation 4. So both communities will benefit from that. Okay, fellow Araxians, that's all for now. Hang in there, there will be more hype soon. And until next time, I will see you Planetside.